Yeah, hello all. Thanks for joining. Welcome to the day two demo session. Kindly confirm in the chat whether you guys can hear me. And let's wait for more minutes for people to join. If not, we'll start. Can anyone confirm in the chat whether you guys can hear me? Perfect. Thank you, Praveen. Yeah, thank you, Praveen, for confirming. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, just give a minute. I'm connecting my class now. So yeah, let me start the session. So yeah, once again, welcome to the session, guys. So today's the day two. Okay. So yeah, the today's session, the recording will also be available, and it will be only shared to the paid candidates. Okay. So it will be available in the portal. So yeah. Okay. And please don't do any batch shifting, and there is no refund. And please do join this WhatsApp group. Just go to this link if you are not already. So yeah, and please reach out to this support mail ID as well as the phone number if you're having any issues regarding payment or anything like recording and accessing your portal. Any issues, you just reach out to them. Okay. So yeah, let me move on. So today we'll be seeing the booting process, but before that, we'll be discussing about the virtualization and containers. Then we'll move on to the booting process. Okay. So firstly, what is virtualization and why we need that, or why companies prefers that, right? So firstly, we will see both virtualization and containers. So firstly, at what when virtualization was initiated, right? So who is the pioneer of virtualization? Obviously, many might already know it is VMware, right? So why they came up with virtualization? Let me get to that. So in those days, like in early 90s, right? So when personal computer was there, sorry, was introduced, as well as your like enterprise computers are like there is a massive increase in the volume of it. So the issue they used to face, right? So let's say there is a computer like this. It used to run only one application because those days the resource is very costly, right? Let's say your CPU, memory, and GPU. So all are very costly. Even your network equipments all are very costly. So the thing is that they can run only one operating system, and it is allocated for only one, let's say, Dynatrace, for an example, even though it came late. But just an example, like this is a monitoring tool, okay? So only Dynatrace can run in this server, and that's it. You cannot run any other because you will be running out of, or it will be like over the threshold if you are using, right? So the issue is, okay, so only this is being utilized. And let's say your memory will be fully utilized, but your CPU won't. And it can be vice versa, right? So it can be either your CPU is underutilized or memory is overutilized. Like that, some thing will be there, right? So the thing is that while this application is not being used, or this is an operating system, there is a OS dependency is there, right? So let's say this Dynatrace is only running on Linux, right? So that's again an issue. So in order to make this kind of a proprietary issue, so only in certain operating system, this application will work, and only that application will be there. Okay, so no other can be, or if it is there also, it cannot run. So it need to wait for at least after business hours or something will be there, right? So it cannot simultaneously run because your system cannot afford it, right? So it can overperform, and there will be it will reach the threshold, right? So that's the reason the virtualization actually is a very good idea, right? So it will solve this issue. Why? Because there is a OS independent is there, right? So you can choose any OS you want in virtual environment. Again, in virtual means what are all the system resources? Your CPU, memory, GPU, network, disk, right? So all this file you will be using as a in virtual environment. It's not like one second, let me show you that. Your system resources are CPU, memory, GPU, and network, and disks, right? So any disk it can be. So the point is, it can be virtually used for some other purpose, and a different OS can be installed. Let's say a service or an application is installed and it is a OS dependent, but that OS you cannot install because you are limited here, right? So only one OS can be booted at a time. So in order to break all these issues, the virtualization is like a nowadays it's like a town jewel, but those days it's a very new thing, right? So like what you can do is like you can do a resource sharing. So you'll be sharing your CPU. Let's say from the CPU, you'll be allocating. Let's say in my case itself, I have 8 core nodes. I'll be allocating two vCPUs, two virtual CPUs. I'll be allocating for the VM. Like that, you will be allocating let's say for memory, I have again 8 gigs. I will be allocating 1 gig for the VRAM. So like that, the list goes on. Okay, so everything you can use as a virtual one, even network you can as a use a virtual NIC and all. But the point is, it's a you're sharing from the existing one. It's not like you're using or provisioning like 10 CPU. Basically, you have only 8. You can max out, or at least 2 core you should have for the base system, right? So you just reduce the 2 core and you can provision the remaining for the uh, virtual environment. But that's what, like, you cannot exceed the physical one. So from the physical one only it is shared, right? So obviously it will be less than that. You can even max out till 4 CPU, right? So, but yeah, it depends on which architecture you're using. Everything matters. But the point is, you are doing a resource sharing from the physical machine, right? So that's how it is. And yeah, so let me show you how it actually installs. So you have Windows. In my case, I have Windows. Okay, this is Windows 11, and I mentioned Windows 10. That's fine. Just yeah. So on top of that, you are installing VMware Workstation. So this is Workstation is a like not in enterprise. Like this version won't be used. In your enterprise, they'll be using VMware vSphere or VMware ESXi. All are same only, but it won't be the same layout. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'll be showing that in the upcoming sessions. Don't worry about it. But yeah, okay. So what is happening in this section? It is resource and what are all the resources? CPU, MEM, GPU, this, net. Okay, so all these being shared. And on top of your VMware, what you're installing, your RHEL Linux, right? So your RHEL, it can be any version, but you're installing a totally different operating system. Or you can even install the same Windows operating system. It doesn't matter, right? So, but on top of your existing one, you are installing a different operating system and it does work. And like now you might ask, okay, whether this is possible in a like normally, let's say you're booting, whether this there is a term called as dual boot or even triple boot, whether that is possible, yes. But it's a scenario that you need to choose between Windows 10 or 11 or Windows 10 or let's say Ubuntu, right? So you need to choose which one to be booted because we will see the booting procedure anyhow, but you need to choose that. That's a grub screen, right? So why? Because all the like drivers, everything is dependent on that particular OS only. So that decision which you take. So once you chosen Windows 10, like again you need to reboot to choose or move to Linux, which is a bad thing, right? So you cannot simultaneously boot. The only possible way is virtualization, right? So on top of that, you install this RHEL. The size can be anything. So let me just give a disk size of 20 gigs. This one CPU and 1 gig of VRAM. Okay. So on top of this, you are installing, let's say HTTP server. Anything it can be, or HTTP service or anything, or even you can take the same Dynatrace as an example. Okay. So these kind of softwares you're installing. So this is the system model or like a blueprint you will use in typically every company from the startups till MNCs, they uses this. So what is the flaw here or why containerization took over this? So what is the issue here? Actually speaking, there is no issues, but what containerization is done a good thing is there is a shift in like here. Okay. So before going to that, so one another good thing about virtualization is you can create a clone, right? So the same mission, you can create a clone of it and you can share it with your anyone, right? So your colleague or anyone, and obviously it will work, right? So clone and share with anyone, right? So that's a good thing as an ISO or as an image, right? So anything you can share it. But one issue is the size will be huge. So let's say 20 gig as of now. It will be for sure more than that. As of now, let's take the base 20 gigs. And now coming to containers, okay? So the same Windows 10, and that's the base OS. On top of that, you are installing Docker for Windows. Okay, so in Docker for Windows, right? So you are actually having Windows, uh, yeah, so Windows with Linux. Okay, so WESL one package will be installed. Okay, let me not confuse you with that. Okay, so just understand Docker for Windows. If you install, there will be one more additional package which will install, and it will initiate the Linux machine in your machine or in your Windows. Okay, so that's your Docker. And what or why Docker is there, right? So now let's get into the history of that. So what is an issue with virtualization, right? So you are relying on a full-fledged OS. So anyhow, you solved one issue. That's great. But here again, an issue is in order to run this one particular application, you need to rely on a one whole operating system on top of an existing operating system, which is fine, but you need a lot of resource to run it, right? So in my case, I'm just giving a vague example like one CPU, one GPU. In your work environment, it won't be the case. It will be huge or it will be for sure huge standard, right? So the thing is that they will allocate a lot of resource just to run a simple application. Let's say uh, it's a simple one, right? So in order to avoid that, like what would be a remedy? So that's where the containers are there. And yeah, so Docker is the company which pioneered container, and still they are. So they are the market leader for that. And even though many companies catch up, but still Docker has a huge community. And that's what, like you just install Docker for Windows, and it's like for any flavor, Docker is available. And on top of Docker, what is the best thing is it has a thing called as Docker engine. So what this Docker engine does is like it will be running the same application as an image. Okay, so let me show you that. Um, Docker.com. So all the famous providers, right? So let's say, yeah, PyTorch is there, or your Nginx, your MongoDB, MySQL, right? So PostgreSQL, all even Grafana, right? So all these, even Bash is available, which is interesting, and even Ubuntu is available, right? So what these are? These are all Docker images. Okay, you see, it is an official images from or from the providers. Let's say anyone, right? So you can take any providers. They have at least one of the image from them. Okay, let's take some monitoring tools so that you see Kibana, Logstash, right? So all the famous one, Datadog, right? So all are images. Okay, it's exactly like your ISO, but it's a very low level image, means only that application will be there. Okay, so let's say a Datadog as an example. So only that image will be there. And now you might ask, okay, like, is there any other thing? You see, it runs on an operating system, Linux and Windows. So it has a very low level OS under it. So it's not like it will run out of anything. So it will have a OS under it, and it will be a very basic OS. It's not like this a full-fledged OS in order to run it, right? So the OS size. So you have I will show you one OS. The OS name is Alpine. Okay, yeah. So this is the minimal OS ever. You see, it's like only 5 MB. And if you install the latest version, it will be around maximum of 100 MB, which is great. It does all the basic thing what your Linux machine does, and that's more than enough for running this one application, right? So you're not running a full-fledged OS. And one important thing is only with this image you cannot do anything, right? So you'll be doing a what? Like you will create a container out of this image. So let's say that is an image, and this is your container. And along with the container, you will have the respective libraries. Right? So let's say, what is a library? I will get into that. But those are all the files which are needed for the image to be running fine. Okay, so libraries and let's say like the prerequisite files. Okay, so important files that we mentioned like that. So for that container to be running fine or that image to be recognized. So all this work will be synchronized or detected by the Docker engine. So Docker engine does the heavy lifting, right? So it does like understands what is this container and what is the image inside it. And let's say for a hypothetical situation that image is corrupted. So your Docker engine does all the things. If it is corrupted, it will throw a log error or something. You need to diagnose it and everything you need to do. And the best thing is it is very less in size. So here I just given a very nominal size, but that won't be the case in your work environment. It will be more than that. Whereas here, the size is just, it won't be even 400 MB guys. Okay, so which is comparatively like 1/10, right? So it's not even less than that. So that's how it is. Okay, so it does only that. And your OS is like altered for that. It is a very lightweight OS just to run that application. And not only that, it will store all the logs related to that application, everything, but only that it does. So that's the reason developers like this method or containers are it's dominating the infra industry, right? Why? Because it does only that, and I can run like 10 containers and still I won't run out of space. You're getting the point, right? So that's the thing. And in your companies, right? So it's like not only these, it's like getting the best of both. So both are combined, and that's the best practice in your industry. So they will combine both virtualization as well as containers. Okay. So to get the both or the best of both. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. So now you understood the difference between virtualization and containers. And we will see firstly the virtualization for sure. Okay, so it's still there and it will be there. It's not like it will, it's kind of extinct or something. It will be there and it's still dominating. And it's like a necessity now, right? But containers are catching up. So let's say in another 5 to 10 years, maybe containers will be the like the main thing, and virtualization may be legacy. It will become as a legacy thing, maybe, right? So that's the thing. And yeah, okay. So let me move on to the booting process. And but before that, any doubts in this one? And can someone raise the hands if you downloaded the resources which I mentioned yesterday? Anyone? Or if you have any issue downloading, please do uh, even let me know on that. So let me change the view. Just yeah. Okay. So the download link is just go to this drive link okay. Or you just you have a URL short now bit.ly/linuxll1. You just go to that link. It should redirect you to the same resource section. Just double click on this installation files and you will end up in this one. The last two files, okay, it can be renamed also. Sorry, it can be sorted based on name or something. So just download this VMware Workstation Pro. Let me even type it here. VMware Workstation Pro for your virtualization and your RHEL. Okay, so RHEL. 8.4. So you need these two. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, Reginald. So you did download it. Great. So yeah, if you're not downloaded already, it's totally fine. Just follow my you must see this one, VMware Workstation Pro. These two files, .exe, and this file just is around 600 MB. The other one is 9.4. So you just like download each individually. Please don't select both and download. It will create a zip file. Again, you need to download it, which will take a lot of time. So better download it individually. Okay. So yeah, fine. So let me move on to the booting process. But before that, um, just a second. So just a second. Yeah. So I had a charger. So, yeah. Hope you can see the screen now. Can someone confirm in the chat? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so let me continue. So the booting process, right? So yeah, so the booting process, like it's a common for both Windows and Linux. But the thing is that a few minor changes will be there, which I will mention. Okay, so don't worry about it. But still, that's the thing. So and why the booting process is important for sysadmin. So that's what, like, let's say you are having a physical server, and what is a physical server is? So simply said, it's like running on some data center hardware, like HP, ILO, Cisco UCS, right? So like that, so many servers will be there. And now you might ask, okay, what is cloud servers, right? So you say you have AWS, GCP. Even they have physically these servers only. HP, Cisco, Intel, Dell, all these servers. But the thing is that it is residing in some other part, right? So sorry, some other part of the world, right? So it can be residing in, let's say, AWS. The default location is not there, not California, right? So like that. Um, so and GCP is like Texas, I guess. So like that, it will be residing in some other part. You're just renting that like sorry, the server in that data center. It's not like cloud means it is somewhere, right? So it's like it's the same mission, but you are paying a hourly charge for it instead of paying the full amount, right? So which is fine, but that's what, like it's just good for a startup or like let's say Netflix and all, they use AWS. So that's what, like you're getting the point, right? So cloud is, actually speaking, it's not cloud. It is like you are using a server which is residing somewhere in the world and you don't have control over it, which is a bad thing, actually speaking, compared to your physical server. Let's say a company like TCS or any company, let's take even Microsoft, they have their own servers, right? So let's say they have their own HPILO, like 5,000 servers. They have all the control over the hardware and the software which is running and the firmware, right? So everything will be under their control. Whereas in AWS, GCP and all, they will take care of all those physical attributes. You are just paying for the service. So that's the reason it is a PaaS, right? So platform as a service, right? So yeah, fine. So let me again come back to the booting process, right? So yeah, so these are all the booting process. So we'll go one by one. So firstly, in yeah. So what happens once you press the power button and after like 3 to 5 minutes, your system will be booted, right? So based on your hardware, let's say it is a SSD. Again, let me give some acronyms. So SSD, and these are all disks, by the way. So SSD is what? Solid state drive. HDD is hard disk drive. And I will give some glimpse about how it actually works in a with an image. I will explain. Okay, so yeah, and in SSD itself we have NVMe SSD, which is as of now the fastest NVMe SSD, and it is around, it is non-volatile express. Okay, so that's the full form of that, and SSD. Okay, so I will show you all these how it works, and yeah, fine. So firstly, based on your disk, your speed matters, right? So let's say you're booting. In my case, I have an SSD. So in your case, you might be running from an SSD, which is totally fine. sorry, in your case, you might be running from a hard disk. And the issue is like the speed will be varying, right? So the read and write speed, we will get into that later sessions. But as of now, that totally changes how your system is booting or the time it takes to boot. Okay. So the next one is the first step is power on or off, right? So once you press the power button, it will perform one thing called as post. I guess yesterday someone told they are part of Linux or Unix admin, right? So yeah, for you it will be like a refresh, but for the people who are very new to IT, so this is like a glimpse of a basic IT knowledge, right? So you must know this no matter what. And let me get an image of a motherboard. So, yeah, again it's giving a small image. One sec. Yeah, let me take any one of these motherboard. And if you just see this image, right? So what is this one? So you see, clearly it is mentioned over here what it means, all the components. And let me quickly explain it. Let me get the fine image. Yeah, this one. So here you see, right? So the first one or this section, right? It is a dim slots, the one I'm highlighting here. Uh, yeah. So you see this slots, right? So these are all dim slots or your memory. So your RAM will be inserted here, and this will take at least 5 minutes, guys. So please stick with me. Okay, so this is not related to our thing, but at least you need to know the basics of your hardware, right? So that's what. And actually, your motherboard is divided into two things. One is north bridge and south bridge. And in the north bridge, you have all the core or the important components, right? So firstly, this is your 8-pin connector, and this is your 24-pin motherboard connector. So what it is your power cable, and it is routed to these pins, right? So without this, or it's let's say it is not compatible, then there is an issue, right? So the next thing is the most important one is your CPU, and you're connected a compatible CPU or not. That's so important. And obviously nowadays it's you have some guide or like even the manual is very much or more than enough, right? So you have all the instructions there. But let's say you got a faulty CPU, and it can happen. It's not like uh, for sure it will never happen. It can be a faulty CPU or it is not compatible with your version of motherboard. It won't boot. Okay, so you are the one who need to diagnose it. And in your work environment, you won't even see this physically. So it will be as a field engineer, right? So he will be located somewhere, and the server also will be located somewhere, right? So only you can instruct him, okay, there is a CPU alert or something in the dashboard or the console, but you like physically you will never see this. But as a sysadmin, you should have at least the basic knowledge of what is actually the components are, right? So yeah. So these are all the DIMM slots or your memory. Okay. And this slot, right? So these are like 6 slots are there. And each motherboard, it may vary. So in some cases, it will be even 8 slots. So these are all your PCIe slots or your simply said your GPU. You will connect here. You can connect your sound card or your network card. So using this PCIe is nothing but your compatible port, you can call it, right? So it is compatible with anything, right? So that like that, and mostly your GPU will be landed here, and this slot, right? So it's not a slot, you can't see it clearly, but here is where your NVMe SSD will be placed. Okay, so let me show an image of that, and I have this Adata Falcon SSD. So this is the SSD which I own. Yeah, you see the same spot, right? So yeah. And the read and write speed of this A data SSD is like 2 gigs per second. Okay, so it's very fast. And that's what like NVMe, PCIe 4 SSD are the fastest. And this connector, right? So it's called as M.2. Okay, so this slot. And yeah, so there is one more slot called as SATA. And let me show you that. Again, we are not getting into too much detail. Okay, so just a vague explanation of these. And only with this hardware, it can even take around 3 to 4 hours. Okay, so that much detail we can go into, but I won't. Okay, so just not to bore you with all those explanations, just the basic concepts you must know. Okay, so these are all the SATA connectors where your hard disk or anything, right? So mostly your hard disk or SSD can be connected, right? So again, all are based on the interfaces. So you see this interface is very different compared to this one, right? So like that. And yeah, so this is where your all your IO will be there, like your mouse or all the USB, like USB ports, your audio jack, right? So everything, your RJ45, like your HDMI, very important. Everything will be here. Okay, so this is where your VRAMs are there. Okay, so for your CPU, and this is the heat shield for that, right? So in order to cool it down, and because these are all the places where your system will get very hot or the chips will get very hot. Okay, and this is not that important, but it is kind of important in most cases because this is your CMOS battery, and that is the one powering your first component, which is your BIOS. Okay, so your CMOS battery plays a very vital role, especially for BIOS, which I will explain in a moment. Okay, so that's the baseline of your chip. Okay, so you have a lot of capacitors and so many ICs will be there. Okay, so these are all like your sound card, so many things. Okay, so you will connect many things in these ports, but the major components are this one: CPU, memory, GPU, storage, and NIC card. Here you will connect network card. Okay, so yeah, fine. So let me move on to the this one. Post means it will send a small ampere of current, guys, to all these components. And if one component fails or for that port it fails, right? So it can be great, but for the time being it is failing means that's an issue, right? So that's what you will see a LED lights here. So let me again Google some MSI easy debug light. Yeah. So like this one LED strip will be there in any MS. So why I'm taking MSI as a example is because I own MSI motherboard. So that's the reason. So I can assure you this will be the layout. Okay. So you'll see this LED. So if this is a hardware failure, you can easily figure it out. And the first step itself, it will be stopped. Okay. So that's your post. So once your post is great, it will move on to the next step, which is your BIOS. Okay. So yeah, you must know a little bit of hardware, Praveen. It's not like only software, right? So we will get into it. Okay. So don't worry about it. But the basic hardware must be at least the basics you must know. Okay. So because you will encounter a lot of field engineers also. So for sure you must know. Yeah. Just the basics. I didn't get into too much details. The bare minimum I explained. So yeah. Okay. So the next one is your BIOS, which is your basic input output system. So why BIOS is so important for any system is so that will get all the hardware components details here. So here also you can verify your hardware information. So let's say again, let's say the post is passed, but still it is failing. Most cases the fan might fail. In post it will be passing, but it won't be having the specific RPM. Your heat sink fan or your motherboard fan, right? So sorry, your CPU fan. It can the RPM might be not up to the level, so that's the reason it might fail, right? So that those information you can see here. Let me show you that one. BIOS. Yeah. and I don't have an official website. Okay. Yeah, so this is your BIOS and yeah, so this is how a BIOS of a gaming motherboard looks like. But in typical, it will be a different layout. Okay, but the information will be the same. Okay, so you have the all the hardware informations, right? So how much memory is used, or you have how much voltage, right? So what is your BIOS version, which is also an important thing, and your temperature, right? So your motherboard temperature and CPU, and what speed it is running, right? So it is running it, and it is calculated via the frequency of the speed, right? So and you can increase it, guys. Okay, so the frequency you can increase, decrease. It's called as overclocking, which again it's an option, but very rarely in your production servers you will do that. But that's what it again depends on um, the vendor, as well as if they want they can, but most cases no one, especially in enterprise, they won't do that. Okay, but if you increase the speed, obviously you'll get to the full limit. But the caveat is it will get very hot, and it can be unstable in sometimes, right? So that's the thing. And you have all the information, you see, right? So you have storage, pan info, all the basic information you have in the BIOS. And the most important out of all is this list, boot priority order. Okay, so what is that? And that's the most important thing, because now we selected, okay, so all the components are great. Okay, so it is in a good condition and it is started to boot. But which one to be prioritized first? That is a dilemma your system will have. So you need to confirm that, okay, I need to boot to this particular disk. And then only it will check that, okay, it is a bootable disk or not. That's the next phase. But you need to select a disk. That's what you will do in BIOS. Okay, so let's say this disk is first one. It can be uh, like it's not having a bootable partition or something, but still it is in the first of the list. And that's the reason in some cases, if you're having a faulty hard disk, or let's say faulty pen drive, you have connected a pen drive for installing an OS, it will throw an error like boot device not found. This is the issue, right? So the boot sector of the device is not recognized by the system, so that it will throw that error, right? So it's not an issue with your hardware of your system or BIOS issue. It's your the device issue, or the priority might be changed. Okay, so you need to check firstly the priority, because it can even default. It can even move to the default settings, and this SSD might be at the first. And the SSD for us, we know that it is a new system and it will be empty, but the system doesn't know that, right? If it replaces the actual boot device, and we will see how it works in your, especially in VMware, we will see. But as of now, that's how it is. Okay, so the boot priority list is very, very important. And that's this one, HDD and SSD. Okay, and you have CD or DVD drive. So let's say you selected the hard disk, the first one. So that is actually having a boot, uh, it is a bootable disk. And next thing is your MBR. So what is an MBR and why it is an important thing? And you will never see this in like while booting, it will never mention as MBR or so, right? But it is a thing. Okay, so what is an MBR? Before that, you need to understand what are all the different partition styles, right? So you have two partition styles, which is MBR and GPT. So GPT full form is GUID partition table, and MBR is master boot record. Okay, so what is these two and why these two are so important, right? So firstly, okay, so you have selected the hard disk, and the hard disk will be dissected into multiple sectors. Yes. Okay, so let's say you're having a 2 TB hard disk or even more than that. like physically we will have only one partition, or let's say uh, two partitions, but in your hard disk, right? So they have multiple sectors of saving the same two partitions. And how many sectors? Again, it depends on the disk and how it is configured, but the major chunk of it is decided by this MBR or GPT. Okay, so how many sectors and how many blocks? And by the way, your hard disk or any disk is called as block devices. Okay, so that's the other name for it. For us, it is just a disk or an information, but for the system, it looks everything as a blocks. Okay, so yeah. So how many blocks per sector, right? So all these informations are like MBR and GPT is the reason for having all this information. Like it differs based on it. And like, okay, now you might ask, okay, why can't we use GPT? Why like using only MBR is? So GPT is a latest partition table compared to MBR. So MBR is around for many years, but the thing is that MBR, right? So it is like it is compatible with all the legacy servers. So what is a legacy server? Can someone put it in the chat? Just give a wild guess. It can be anything. It can be wrong, guys. What is a legacy server? I might have mentioned it a while back, but let's see if you get it. Anyone? So the question is, what is a legacy server? Okay, that's a very specific legacy server. That's good. Yeah. So a server or an OS or the hardware, let's take a generic as a hardware as well as software, right? So which is older than, let's say, 20 plus years. Exactly. Older technology, which is like which will have hard time to update. Let's say you are having especially mainframe, right? So obviously many might came across this mainframe servers like IBM servers, IBM 400, right? So it is like it might be late 90s. Okay, so but it will be still in use. And if you update, what will be an issue? Like everything will be changed, and we don't know whether it will even boot back up. Okay, so even till now, there will be servers which will never boot it or never updated. So they will leave as it is. And especially we'll see these kind of legacy servers in banking applications. Okay, so it's not like it's not doing its job, or it doesn't do anything, but it is so important as such. It does a good job, and it's not being updated for a very long time. Okay, so those are all called as legacy servers. And all those legacy servers, right, your mainframe or most of the servers are compatible with MBR. And this is not only limited to your OS like Windows or Linux. It's like every OS you have this MBR and GPT as a partition table. Okay, so that's the thing. And one more difference between MBR and GPT is, so MBR can have four primary partitions. So what is this primary and extended? We will get to that in later session, guys. But as of now, this is the difference. Okay, so like you can only, so let me give a basic context. Yeah, so one sec. Yeah, so in this disk, so what if I can create only four primary partitions or four partitions, right? So the fifth partition, whatever I create, it will become as a logical partition. Okay, so as of now, it won't make sense, but in later sessions, we will see it clearly. But what is a what is a partition style we have in my system or even in your system? Just go to your disk management, go to start and type disk management, and you will end up in this screen. Okay, so it can be n number of disks. It doesn't matter. Just right click in a disk, go to properties, volumes, and like I will assure you 200% you will see GPT only, because Windows had GPT as a default partition table for a very long time. Like from Windows Vista time, they used to push the GPT. which is a good thing actually. It's not a bad thing that okay they avoided MBR or something. It's a good thing, right? So that is where the industry is moving towards, and you as an end user you will never care about these all, right? So as it can be either MBR or GPT, no one cares, even as a sysadmin. But if you're having some compatibility issue, even this will matter, right? So your MBR and GPT, it can be some. Let's say you're having or you're transferring a project from a different company to yours, even this can conflict, right? So you should consider everything or at least have a knowledge of everything, right? So that's the reason. This is also an important one. Okay. So yeah, your MBR is having all these sectors. Okay. Again, it's a imaginary sector. And let me just 1 second. Let me quickly show you your hard disk. Okay. So yeah. So this is your hard disk, guys. Okay. So let me not get into too much detail, but this is how it will read. Okay, so you have the spindle and your disks, right? So you have this IO head, and it will read so fastly that like it will. Okay, so for the first time you're booting, let's say you bought a new laptop. As of now, nowadays it is SSD. By default, you will get the SSDs. Let's say like 5 to 10 years back, you will have only hard disks, right? So in that case, for the first time, if it is booting, it will take some time, right? So why? Because, or if you bought a new external hard disk, let's say, for the first time, it might take some time. Why? Because it need to find or it need to know the which is the boot sector because it doesn't know, right? So it will, this IO head will quickly check for all the sectors, and it's an imaginary sectors. Okay, so it's not like physically it will be there. It will be imaginary sectors, and it will check it everything. If it is not found anywhere, you'll get an error like boot device not found. Okay, so that's the same error, right? So let's say in this case it is found the boot device or the boot sector. Let's say this is the one. What is there inside that? Right, so you have grub. So now the next one is grub. Okay, so it will be in a flow, guys. So that's how it is. And if it is stuck anywhere, it will be only in that section. So you are the one who need to figure out, okay, why it is still stuck in that one, right? So yeah. So what is grub? A grub screen is a common. Firstly, what is a grub full form is Grand Unified Bootloader. Okay, so which doesn't give much information. So let me show you a grub screen so that you can yeah. So you might have seen like this one screen, right? At least once you might have seen this one, or in Windows, let's say you might have seen like this, right? So if you install Windows itself multiple times, you might have seen like Windows 10, again Windows 10 or Windows 11, right? So if it is existing in the same device, you will see this. So what is this? As I mentioned before, this is what called as dual boot. Okay, so you have a choice to choose between either Windows or Ubuntu or any OS. It can be even again a Windows machine. Okay, so it doesn't matter, but here is where you will choose it. And why we need to choose it? That's what, like all the drivers and software, everything will be different for each and every operating system, right? So that's the reason you have. In this case, let's take a RHEL and Windows 10 or 11. Okay, so Windows 11, let's say. So you have a choice between both in this grub screen. So which one you will choose? And why this is an important is you must choose it. That's the thing. Okay, so let's say you chosen this one, and let me. And this is an important section. Now you might ask, okay, this is a thing only for dual boot, right? So obviously someone would ask that. No. So even for a single operating system, you will have grub screen. Okay, so it's not like only for dual boot or triple boot, right? So even for, let's say you have only one, even I will show you that. Okay, so only that one also, or let me show you now only. I already have a VM. Uh, Let me restart it. Yeah, this is the grub screen, guys. Okay, so you see, I have only one operating system, and the other one is nothing but a rescue mode. Okay, so you can ignore that, but you see this one, this is our actual operating system. So in this case, I have only one, but still it must go through this. Okay, and one important thing in your grub is your emergency mode, which is a good thing, right? So because this is a mode where you can change few things, which we will get into later, but it is before booting to kernel. So as I mentioned in yesterday's session, kernel is like your part of your system, right? So before booting to a kernel, you're changing something, it will impact the whole boot, right? So that's what we are aiming for. And let's say something went wrong in the kernel itself, you can go to emergency mode and even revive your kernel, right? So that's the thing about this one. And the next one is your kernel. So what does kernel does? And I might have exaggerated. Okay, it does everything. And typically speaking, yes, it does all the heavy lifting of your system. And like this. Okay, so I've just give a Windows example so that easily you can understand. So so your kernel is the one which will do the drivers. So what is a driver now? So let's say audio, if I select, I have this headphones or the Bluetooth devices connected. Right. So you have battery or any such hardware is like it is physically there, but your system or your OS need to understand it, right? So there is an intermediate or a middleman which is called as drivers. And your kernel is the one which makes sure the drivers works properly. Okay, so it's a very important job, right? So if something went wrong, or for the current boot, it is not working. And it can happen, guys, like let's say a keyboard, let's say, as an example, okay? The keyboard is not working as expected for this boot. Okay, so for the, let's say you restarted it, fixed it. So what might have happened? So the driver might be an issue, or it can be even a driver outdated and it did update it, but it must need a reboot. Like that's so many factors you can have just for this kernel, right? So kernel does like so many things, and basically your disk management, right? So your disk, like your this one, right? So this is also kernel is for, and your process and your driver, right? So the list goes on. Okay. So your libraries. So now is a good time I can explain about library files. So what is a library file? And let's say you are a developer, you can easily understand this, right? So let me go to C and Windows, and you have system 32. Okay. So what is this? This is a directory where all the important files in your for your OS is residing. Okay. So yeah, you see uh, like around 4,700 plus files are there, and you see a lot of DLL files. So what is the purpose of this DLL files? Or you have this like direct text. Okay, so you might seen this error or something like it is not found. So what is this all, right? So let's say you installed a game like Call of Duty or any games as such you installed, you might install on a new machine. It's not a old machine. Okay, so on a new OS, you're installing this and it won't boot. Why? Because your game or that Call of Duty or any game, let's take, that game is built on top of that library. Okay, so the DirectX is a common library, and here that game requires that file. Okay, so yeah, you see, it's an API. So the API as a word, if you are a developer, you might know it. Obviously, you will know it. But if you are new to IT, so it's nothing but on top of that DirectX only, your that game or any software is built, right? So that DirectX is needed for the software to be running. That's obvious, right? So that's the reason it will throw like that exceptional error, especially in your Windows, right? So that's a library files. It will have bunch of files, guys. Okay, so not only directors, you have .NET runtime. Okay, so runtime errors, you will see a lot of runtime errors, which is a typical one, right? So you see like this some unexceptional error, right? So um, sorry, exceptional errors, and yeah, so the fix is just install the .NET runtime or the compatible .NET runtime version. So then it will be fixed, right? So that's the thing, right? So library files is also needed for a OS to be running fine because OS is nothing but what? It's a software, right? So it's a huge software you can call. At the end of the day, it is also a software and it needs a lot of libraries. Let's say for a software or a game, it needs 10 libraries. For your OS, it needs 500 libraries. Okay, so you see how much thing it need to be compatible, right? So that's the thing. Okay, so that's your kernel and fine. So your kernel can go how to say some issue is there in your kernel, it will be called as kernel panic, which we will try to recreate. Okay, so if something intentionally will edit a config file wrongly, so what will happen? I will show you that in later sessions, not now, but yeah, that's called as kernel panic. Your system itself won't boot, guys. It will be stuck in kernel, or it will ask you to immediately to go to the emergency mode automatically. Until you fix it, it won't move further. Okay, so yeah. And the next one is your init process. Okay, so or init level you can call it. So what is this? So you have okay. So you selected or it's been through all these sections, right? So your kernel also great. It's running great. Now, how your system can be booted? So either you need a GUI or CLI, or you need a network or without network. Like this choice is there, right? So that's what called as init levels. Okay, so let's say you selected init 0, it's a it will initiate the shutdown process. Okay, so what I told is the network and all, right? So that will be init 2, but before that you have init 1, which is a single user mode, which is nothing but your emergency mode. Okay, so why it is specifically called a single user? Why? Because in this machine or this UI, either like, can I see this in remote connection? No, right? So in your work environment also, let's say one server went down and it's a physical server. So it will be residing in, let's say, Japan or somewhere, right? So someone in the field engineer can only see that. You cannot. Okay, so in some cases, if they have the remote view chip or that ILO console chip is there, so if they have that, sorry, the IO controller will be there. So if they have that chip, then great. If they don't, only the field engineer can see this screen. So that's why it is called a single user mode. And this is the console, by the way, guys. Okay. So they have all the privilege to stop, start, everything they can do, and they only can do. Okay, so in AWS, only AWS engineers can do, or AWS field engineer can do. Okay, so like that. You don't even have a privilege to know the location of that also, right? So that's the thing called a single user mode, and we will go to that. Okay, so don't worry about it. But yeah, that's a single user mode, and in it too, it's called as multi-user mode without network. So let's say some issue with your one software, right? So whenever you connect to that server, whenever you connect to open that application, right away it starts an update, and it's not updating; it is throwing some like unexpected error or something, right? So how do you fix that, right? So you need to stop that process, or still it will not update. So what you should do, you should revert the software back, and uh, like like this is also one of the mode you can go to and revert the software back to its default settings or like a previous state. right? So that's where this, sorry, this without network. Okay, so basically your Wi-Fi won't be connected to this. Okay, so Wi-Fi or your a network card like LAN, nothing will be there. Your network drivers itself won't be loaded. As simple as that. Okay, so that's why. And why it is called as multi-user. I never explained about this yet, right? So your server, right? Your let's say your VM, I can open multiple sessions like this. Okay, so one second. Is this VM? Okay, it's not yet booted, right? So in your Windows, you can't do that. So you can open multiple remote connection for the same user. Okay, so let me boot it. Okay, then you can understand clearly. Okay, so yeah, so I'm connecting to the same machine via remote connection using this TT. Okay, so now it trying to connect, and that's fine. I can open one more session and it will also connect. I can open like 1,000 sessions also it will connect. Why? Because your Linux machine, right? It supports multi-user mode and this called as TTY. Like each mode, right? It will be like you see this, right? So you can understand or your server understands, okay, he opened multiple sessions for the same user, which is acceptable here. So now you see same user and like how within 2 seconds I did log them out, right? So you're getting the point, right? So that's how it is in your Windows, which you cannot do that in line. Sorry, it's you cannot do that in Windows. In Linux, it works natively, right? In Windows, there is a workaround, okay, in Windows Server, but natively it doesn't support this. So if you try to do the same, right? So let's say one of your colleague logged in as admin, and you are also trying to open a remote connection, right? So MSTSC, if you do, so remotely you are trying to connect, his connection will be terminated actually. Okay, so which is bit weird, but that's how it is. Only one active session is allowed for particular user. That's how Windows has been there for ages, right? But yeah, in Linux, this is also one of the major USB, right? So at the same time, any number of sessions can be opened and it will be functional, right? So it's not like only session opened and you cannot do anything. You can do whatever you want and it will be captured. Okay. So yeah, that's what multi-user means. And that's what the mode we will be logging in, which is init 3. And it is multi-user, the same thing with network. And it is CLI mode. So what is CLI? Yesterday I did told. Can someone recall what is CLI? And init 4, nothing is there, guys. You can ignore that. Init 5, it is called as X11 or GUI. Yeah, exactly. Date, command line interface. Awesome. So yeah, we saw two types of interfaces. One is CLI and GUI. And init 3 is CLI, init 5 is GUI. As simple as that. Okay. So what is this mode? It is which init? Init 5, exactly. So because I have a UI element here. This doesn't belongs to Windows 11, right? So it's a rel mission. And yeah, so that's the thing. Okay. So that's the init 5. And the last still we are not done yet. So there is one more mode called as a reboot. So what if I initiate init 6, my system, you see, automatically it reboots, right? So that's the thing. Yes. So let me quickly show you the BIOS here and okay, let it boot. So that's your init levels. Okay. So your system need to know, and similar to this, there is one section in your Windows also, which is called as advanced boot option. So if you ever came across this one, let's say you even now you can check. So intentionally you just reboot your laptop or yeah, your system like 3 to 4 times. If you boot once, it is before booting itself, you are shutting it down. Again, do it for 3 to 4 times. It will go to a panic state and it will think that, okay, your startup is having an error. So it will try to boot to the advanced boot option. And in the advanced boot option, you have this section which is called as startup settings. Okay, so this one. And once you click that startup settings, you will see this one. Okay, so why I shown this one is, you see, right? Can you relate it to, right? So you see, enable safe mode with network and enable safe mode. So if you select this fourth option or press F4, okay, so if you press the F4, it won't boot the network, guys. Okay, so the network drivers won't be booted for this option. And if you select the fifth option, the same thing, safe mode will be booted along with the network. And for the sixth option, again the safe mode, but it will be only CLI. Again, I'm giving an example of Windows. Okay, so easily you can connect it with. Okay, so even in Windows, you have the same init level, but it's called as advanced boot option, but you get the point, right? So yeah, so that's how it is. Okay, so you have kind of similar, but not the same, but yeah. Or you can even go to start and type sysconfig. Yeah, you have this boot, you see, safe boot. If you select this checkbox, you have minimal, which doesn't have a network, guys. Okay, so minimal means it will have only Windows bundled like Windows bundled applications, right? So it doesn't have network. And if you select this radio button only, it will have the network. Until you not select this one, it won't work. Okay, so that's your safe boot option. And you even have one interesting option which you might have not came across, which is no GUI boot. So if you select this, what will happen? Can someone mention in the chat? No GUI boot means what? It's your MS-DOS days. Okay, so MS-DOS. So you just try to Google MS. Yeah, exactly. Windows will be on DOS. So MS-DOS is nothing but just your command prompt. Okay, so that's how much tailored you can make your system to. So if there is no GUI, your system will be like, in my case, my system will be at least my memory will be saved for at least 30% or 40% of my memory will be saved, right? So like that. So there will be, if I don't want the GUI, I don't want it really. I can select this and I can cancel it for the current boot. Okay, so that's the thing, right? So that's your init process, and let me copy it. And still we are not done yet. So one more process which you guys can easily understand, which is called as a run level. The same thing, but what is a run level, right? So a run level is like along with this. So this is the init process, right? So along with this init, I want some software also to be loaded. So in your Windows, you have startup applications, right? Yeah, startup apps. You see, in my case, these are all the startup apps I have, and I did disable few, right? But still, few are enabled. But what it does, so it will run along with my OS once my OS is booted, right? So that's the thing here. It will run this run level once that run level is booted. Let's say init 3, init 5, right? So only these two are usable, by the way. So, or you will use, okay? So let's say you selected any one of those, you will have this thing called as a run level, okay? And it will be under this part. And again, don't worry about this path and all. Okay. And by default, if you want to run an init level, you just do etc init.d. There is a directory called as this one. You can place any software here. It will be automatically booted along with your OS. It doesn't matter which like which init process you select, it will boot along with it. Or if you want it to be this one, you have like this. Yeah, you see, etc rc.d for each and every run level you have it. Yes. Okay. But trust me, we will use etc init.d in your work environment, but it's still there. This option is there. Okay. So yeah. And lastly, you will see the just now we saw, right? The lock screen. So basically that's how, or that's the process which happens while you boot. And I toned down so much, especially in BIOS. I gave only the basics. Okay, so just with BIOS, you can take around, or I can take around 3 to 4 hours. That much of information is there, but which is not that relevant for a sysadmin. All right, so just the basics you must know. It's not like for sure you should know that, then only you can attend the interview or you are eligible for a sysadmin. Nothing like that. But if you are a OS enthusiast or computer enthusiast, you can at least try to search for this BIOS. It's a very interesting thing, guys. Okay, just with this overclocking, you can go for hours and hours. So the session can go so that much. Yeah, that much it is. So the init 3, right? So yeah. Okay, sorry, I mentioned that twice without. So it is with network. Okay. So init 3 is the default boot mode which we will boot, guys. Okay, so it's nothing but CLI. So what if in my case I have GUI? So what if in your work environment it won't be this one? Okay, so in your work environment it will be only CLI or init 3, which is it does have multi-user mode, which we already discussed, right? So what is a multi-user mode? But along with the network it will have, right? So init 2 is also fine, but it doesn't even have a network adapter or network connection. Whereas here it does have network as well as it does a CLI based UI. Even this will be a CLI, but even this will be a CLI, but this is what is important for us, because this is usable for, obviously we need network, right? Obviously we need multi-user. So everything is checked. Yeah. So that's the reason this is an important one and init 5. So either of one will be there in your machine. So, and how to check that is just log into your machine, which I will show you how to install. Don't worry about it. But just once you logged in, you just type run level. That's the command. You will see the run level. Okay. As simple as that. Okay. So while it's loading, any doubts in this one, guys? No doubts. That's great. So in your Windows, right? So this after this grub, instead of kernel, it will go to EFI. Okay, so EFI is also kind of kernel, but in Windows version. Okay, and there is one more step it will go. Then only it will go to the init. Similar init process run level is there, but here it is called a startup programs. So everything is almost same, but in a Windows way, if you want to, if you're having an issue, like let's say someone told Cloud Strike, right? So that's the thing. So if you don't have that issues and all, it's like you will never come across these kind of, or you need not even know this. But if you have some issues, for it's a widespread issue, for sure you must understand how to fix it. Okay. So again, I need to, uh, second, it is, okay. Yeah. So it is with network. Okay, so let me type it again. Okay. Yeah. Init.d is a directory, Ravi. So anything which has an extension called as .d is a directory. Okay. So yeah, fine. So let me move on to the installation part, which is again an interesting one. Yeah, great. So let me show you again. Please do download this one, guys, if you're fine with the VMware, um, like the way, sorry, the method of installing in your machine. If you are running in a, let's say, corporate machine or some mission. Okay, so it can be anything. Just you can skip this one. Okay, so I will show you how to do that in GCP as well as AWS. But um, I would suggest you to install VMware Workstation. Okay, so yeah, okay. So firstly, if you download it, just let me show you this one. Yeah, so once you downloaded this exe file, just double click it and it will open in this installation wizard. Click on next. That's it. It will start the installation. It will hardly take you 2 minutes to 5 minutes, guys. That's the maximum time the ETA will be. And you have this key. Again, this key is universal for anyone. Okay. Again, if you use only this version, it's not like, okay, I downloaded from the official VMware site. And I'm because in official site, you won't get this version right away. You will get 17, which is the latest one. But 16.2 itself is more than enough. And this is an official image, guys. It's not like cracked or something. Okay, so just use this key because it's by default, it will be installing a evaluation version, which means only 60 days you are allowed to use it, which is a bad thing. So try to use this key. Okay, so again, you must use this version only, right? So this key is available in this installation file. Who asked it? Praveen. Okay, so just wait for at least 10 minutes. Okay, so I will instruct you, then you can install. Okay, so yeah, the key is inside this VMware Workstation installation file. You will see at the last. This is the key. Okay, so please do install, and once you install, you will see this home page, and just go to the help section above. You see here, status is licensed and no expiration, which is great, right? So the same key, you see, even I am using the same key for quite some time because that's how it is. Okay, so don't ask like how I got the key or something. But yeah, I already have VMware. Okay, if you have a VMware something, that's totally fine. So the VMware version doesn't matter. Only if you're having less than VMware 14, right? So which is a old one. So it's like 2013, like that old it is. VMware 14 means version 14. It's not compatible. Okay, so it will if some driver issue, it will throw error. But if you have VMware 15 plus and all, that's great. Any version you can use, 16 or 17 or even the latest one, 17.3 or something. So you can use that. It doesn't matter. Okay, but at least try to have 16 or 15 plus. Or if you don't like want any other version, just try to download this version. Okay, VMware Workstation Pro and the installation key. Just follow this PDF. It is easy for you because I can uninstall and show you, but it will take a lot of time. Right, so it's just 2 minutes, guys. Okay, so you just open, it will automatically install and it will extract all the important files. You just enter the key. That's it, right? So the next one is how to initiate. Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't brought that up. So you can use Oracle VirtualBox or Nutanix, right? So Vagrant, hypervisor, anything you can use. Okay, so it's not like only VMware I'm suggesting you, but in my case, VMware doesn't have any like compatibility issues. Okay, so and in your work environment, VMware is the preferred one, guys. Even though you have Oracle VirtualBox or any other, but yeah, so in your work environment, VMware is the one. So yeah, anyhow, it's not the same. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, multiple times, it's VMware vSphere, but still the settings or it's almost the same. Okay, so yeah, you can use Oracle VirtualBox. That's totally fine. Shanti. Okay, fine. So once you install that one, and let me stop this better. Right, so you will be treated with this home screen and click on create a new virtual machine. And once you are clicked, don't proceed. I didn't explain one thing, which is just go to your task manager, right click your taskbar, task manager, go to your performance, right? Select CPU, and here check virtualization is enabled. Okay, so most cases it will be disabled, guys. Okay, so if you're already installed some VM before, like Shravanti did, right? So Shravanti or someone who already installed, that's great because you would have enabled the virtualization. For the people who never installed anything, for them it will be disabled virtualization. So how to enable it? So you need to go to your laptop's BIOS. Okay, so laptop BIOS, not your VMware BIOS. Okay, so many people might confuse with that. So your laptop BIOS is again how to go to that. Let's say in my case, I'm using the HP Victus BIOS virtualization. Okay, so you just type like this, it will give you these instructions. Okay, so why I am specifically mentioned as this one? Yeah, Virender, 15.5 is also fine. Okay, so at least that's what, like 14 is not recommended. 15 plus, totally you can use it, no issues. So why I'm specifically mentioning as HP or let's say a Dell or Lenovo, the issue with each and every vendor, right? They are notorious to change the BIOS key. Okay, so I might recommend you to use F2, which is the common key for most of it. But let's say HP, they uses F10. Right, so in my PC, it is Dell, delete key. Okay, so like that, each and every hardware vendor designates a specific BIOS key. Okay, so that's the reason. Please search with your vendor. Let's say Dell, Lenovo. It can be anything. Just try to Google it and sorry, yeah, anything it can be. You see, the first link will be the official one. Okay, so don't go to some other link. Just the first one will be for sure the official one because that's important for them also. So they here it will be instructed. Okay, so how you can do with Windows 10, how you can do with Windows 11, everything. Anyhow, it is not OS dependent, but still you can do it. Just log into your so in HP, you see, just go to your BIOS, virtualization technology enable, and press F10 to save it. You see, F10 to save, and that's it. Once you boot, again come back to the task manager, virtualization is enabled. So why we should enable this? Going back to this explanation, you see, resource sharing, right? This will be uh, like there won't be a your CPU or memory, any such hardware won't be shared because you are not allowing it to. There is a software gate, right? So your OS doesn't allow it. Your hardware level itself, it is kind of locked, right? So that's the reason it must be enabled. Then only your OS knows that, okay, because And I'm not sure why Windows disabled by default, but nowadays it's not. Mostly, especially for gaming laptops, they do enable it. But yeah, that's important, guys. Very, very important, especially for a VMware. So without that, it will throw error for sure. Okay. So once you enable that and come back here, select the custom and advanced settings. Next. And you see this one, this is a hardware compatibility. It's not your RHEL. Okay, so this is your VMware's hardware compatibility. And you see this ES6i7, which we will install that later, right? So that's the one. And you see how, like, what is the journey of your VMware? You see how much very basic limitation it is, right? So those days, this is like VMware Workstation 5 is like 2008 or something, 2007 or 8. It's that old. And you see the compatibility products, it's still compatible, but the issue is you see the limitation. It's very limited, right? So, but you see how long they came across. And nowadays the limitation is this is for one VM, guys. It's not the entirety of your VMware workstation. Just for one VM, you can use this much of memory, this much of processor. These are all compatible ones. Okay? Again, don't select or change anything. Just go with the first one. Next. And here is where the most important one, which is where you need to select your ISO. Okay, so I actually have 8.2 and in my drive I have 8.4. So it doesn't matter, guys. Okay, so it can be 8.4 to 8.6, version 8 and 9, it doesn't matter. But never ever install version 7 because it became obsolete in terms of your exam, in terms of your work environment, right? So most companies already switched or updated to version 8, RHEL 8. Okay, so please try to avoid RHEL 7. Okay, so because many components are changed. So there is a vast difference between RHEL 7 and 8 compared to RHEL 8 and 9. RHEL 8 and 9 is like very minimal change. It's like an incremental change. It's like as a end user, you will never see a change. Okay, so only if you work in a kernel level or kind of advanced level, you can understand, okay, there is a change here, right? So that's the reason. Try to use any RHEL 8 version or 9. It doesn't matter. But in exam also, either 8 or 9, you have an option. I'm not sure nowadays it's only 9. Okay. But the questions will be the same. You don't worry about it. But yeah, that's how it is. You need to select it here, right? So select this radio button, click on next. And I did located it. Okay. So just click on browse and select next. And you need to give a name to it. And it is an easy installation information. So what is easy installation now? So it will skip the major chunk of the installation process. Okay, so and we barely need the easy installation for our Windows installation, right? So it's like taking so many minutes to install, whereas this one takes hardly few minutes. So that's what like easy installation is so important. So you see, I'm just giving the username, user one. The password, please keep it very small or because we will save this password. Okay, so keep it small. If you're keeping your own password, that's totally fine, but do remember it. Okay, that's important. And anyhow, we will save it, but still the same password is used for your root account, guys, which means your what? Admin account. Okay, so let me give the password as 1234, and that's the password which I will use for all the users. Okay, so click on next and you select where to be saved, like what is the destination path. And now is an important thing that if I or you have multiple partitions, it's not like only if you have multiple partitions you should install. Let's say in my case, I have partition C and D, right? So I will be go ahead and install on D. Why? Because we will be using multiple or the disk management, right? So I will, while the disk management section, I will be using, let's say 30 to 50 gigs. And what if the same is be consumed here? So which is fine, but if it is reaching the threshold, that's an issue, right? So that is an issue for your Windows machine, not your Linux. Okay, so that's the thing. So if you're having multiple partitions like I do, please do select the other one and try to install. And if you have only one, you don't have a choice. Okay, so you can ignore that. You must install on that one only. So yeah, but make sure you are not exhausting your disks. Guys. Okay, so that's so important, right? So yeah, so I will be installing so this PC, everything, and yeah, VM 350. Okay, so next, and how many processor I want it to be, right? So how many I want it to be as a virtual environment. So in my case, in this laptop, I have 6 cores. Because again, you can view that in your task manager performance, CPU, how many cores? 6. From this, I'm allocating only one, which is enough. And the processor, so the core as well as the how many processor, that's one only. And this one, right? So your virtual memory, how much you want. By default, it is recommending you to use 2 gigs, then you go for it. It's not like, okay, only 2 gigs. Oh, sorry, you have only 4 gigs, which is very rare nowadays. At least 8 gigs in most of the laptops, it is there. So if you have 8 gigs, it will automatically recommend you with 2 gigs, which you can just select next. And this is an important one, which is which network connection you're going to use. Either you can use NAT or bridge network. Both should work, but never select the other 2 radio buttons. Why? Because this means it doesn't connect to the network. This also doesn't connect to the network. Okay, so just use either one, but I recommend you to use this NAT, network address translation. Next, just go with the recommended one, this one, SCSI controller. This is what an important one, virtual disk type. Okay, so this is your interfaces. As I mentioned before, NVMe I explained, right? So that's nothing but your interface, guys. So NVMe, SATA, SCSI, all are your cable you connect physically, right? So that's how these all differ. So NVMe is like a chip, all right? So you will just insert it, whereas SATA is like there will be a bus cable, right? So and SCSI is also like that, and ID is like obsolete. No one uses it anymore. Okay, so that's what if you select NVMe, and that's the recommended one. And don't speculate that, okay, so I selected NVMe and I'm running a hard disk. Okay, so it's not like, okay, I mentioned a while ago, NVMe is the fastest storage. And you should not assume that, okay, I selected NVMe, it will be the fastest. Nothing like that. It's a virtual environment. Keep that in mind. So you're selecting this virtually. Again, it's running on top of your hard disk. It's totally dependent on your hard disk speed, read and write. Okay, so at the end of the day, this is what matters. And if let's say you are running in a 10-year-old machine, obviously it will be slow. And don't expect you're selecting NVMe and thinking that it will be faster. No. Okay, it's a virtual thing, right? So yeah, because in my previous batch, one person thought like that. So that's the reason I'm right away putting it that. So putting that information. So yeah, so this obviously just select the create a new disk next. And this is an important section, guys. So you have store virtual disk as a single file, as a multiple file. So what is the difference? Let me explain. Because they vaguely give that as an explanation, or there is no explanation only there, right? So firstly, we have same 20 gigs we will take as an example, and yeah, 20 gigs, and here it is called as not the same options, whereas here it is called as thick provisioning, and here it is thin provisioning. Same 20 gigs. So what is thick provisioning is it's like right away if I click next, right? So you see store virtual disk as a single file. So if I click next, it will create the whole 20 gigs as a single file right away once the VM is initiated, right? once it is fully installed, the 20 gigs will be consumed for only this VM, right? So that's a typically that's what it should be, right? But no, you can incrementally use also. It's not like, okay, only you should have a single file. Rather, it can be incrementally used like this. Let's say this is like 1 gig or something, right? So 1 GB. Again, based on your requirement, it can be like 3 GB. So it can increase, but the point is it should not, or it won't exceed more than 20. Obviously, you're allocating 20 gigs only, right? You can extend it, which we will see, but right away you cannot, right? So here you are provisioning it right away. Here you are not. Incrementally you are provisioning it. As simple as that. Okay. So that's for the reason it is called as thin provisioning and thick provisioning. And in your VMware vSphere, you will have that options as mentioned like that. But I'm not sure why they mention like this, but it's the same meaning only. Okay. So I'll be saving it as multiple files. That's totally fine. Next, select where you want to save your disk file. So VM, the same directory you can create inside one more directory called as disks and try to save as anything. I will just save it as numbers so that it will be easy for me. So next, and this is a summary. Finish and check this box. Okay, so this is where you will get an error, right? So if your virtualization is not enabled, right, you will for sure get an error here because it is your VMware is trying to connect to that hardware virtually, but it is not. Okay, so that's the reason it will throw that error. And now you see easy installation is in progress. So let it install. I will show you where it is skipping the installation process. Okay, so once we see that loading screen, we will move on to the next method, which is AWS as well as GCP. And please hold on for 10 more minutes. Okay, so at least like after the like 8 p.m. after it will be at least 8:10. Okay, so I will show you all the three methods so that you will be ready for the next weeks, right? So it will be weekend. So yeah, it is installing. Okay, it did skip it. So it did show you some options here, right? Previously. So it did skip it because it's a easy installation. Fine. So let it install. So it might take another 10 more minutes maximum. So let it install. You see these many packages it need to unpack, install everything it will do. Okay. So let it do in the background. We will move on to the AWS and GCP. So what is AWS or GCP? Firstly, they are all CSP or cloud service providers. Okay. CSP, and you have so many CSPs, guys. Okay, so it's like flooded now. So you have AWS, which is the market leader, GCP, Azure, OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. You have even Alibaba Cloud, right? So it doesn't matter which one you want to use, but I highly recommend you to use only AWS and GCP because AWS is offering you 1 year of free year account. Okay, so that's great. And that's more than enough for us. And once you exhaust that 1 year, again, you can create it one more account with the same credit card, which is great. Credit or debit card. And for GCP, it is 90 days. Again, that's more than enough for of $300 free credit. Again, they won't credit it to your account for sure. Just they will credit it to you as a virtual like kind of credit, right? So $300 is vaguely like 22K INR, right? So it will be 22 to 25K, right? So it will be in your GCP like that portal. So once you start using some services, it will be deducted. Okay, that's your GCP. And Azure, right? So Azure is issue, right? It will be like 30 days only trial, and they are giving you, or if you are a student, and if for students only, it is $100 free credit. But you should submit your information, student information. But yeah, it's $100 free credit, but for students, it's not for a working professional or yeah. Okay, so that's the one. And Alibaba Cloud is also giving you free trials. So anything you can use. But the thing is that you should use. Okay, so if you are not able to install or you are having hard time using this, always try to use this cloud because this is your lab. Okay, so you must have a working lab. That's so important, right? So, but this too should be fine. Okay, so if your GCP is not accepting your credit card, try with AWS. It doesn't matter. Okay, so at the end, it is the same OS. That's the that matters, right? So we are not using some other OS. This RHEL, right? So yeah. So firstly, let's see AWS, and the site is aws.amazon.com, and you can use your existing Amazon account, or you can use a new account just for the practice. And as I mentioned, 1 year of free-tier account, and it does accept payment is CC or debit card, right? So credit card or debit card. Only AWS accepts that base. I'm not sure why, but that's how it is. And yeah, so that's like, and here it is called as EC2. And what is EC2? Elastic. Does anyone knows that? Elastic Cloud? What? At last. Let's see if someone gets it. Exactly. So compute, right? So EC2. Okay. And yeah, so it's, and AWS is notorious to have very weird names like Glacier, and a lot of names will be there, very unique names. That's fine, but still it's like in GCP, it is pretty straightforward mostly. Whereas here it's kind of very weird names will be there for few services. But yeah, we don't have a choice. And GCP, this is the link, cloud.google.com. And where did they mention the $300? Okay, they didn't mention here, but it is still there. Okay, so you just see pricing. Okay, so it's not giving that. Yeah, Google Cloud free tier, right? So you can use that, and it is a $300 free tier, guys. Okay, so that's great. And payment, they accept on the credit card. And again, Google is notorious to reject sometimes. You just try once more. If you are, it's not, then try a different card. If it's really not doing any other, like it's not, it's declined or it's rejected for you, please try AWS. Okay, so you can ditch GCP, sorry, GCP itself. It's okay, yeah, fine. So once you are, okay, one sec, let me log in again. So let me pause my screen so that let me log into my account. So it's pretty straightforward, guys. Click on create an Amazon account. Let me know. You just click on create and you just create, and right away it will ask you for the payment. And now you might ask, okay, I just now mentioned it is a free tier. Why they're asking for the payment? That's a legit question. So why? Because let's say you are using a static IP, right? So a simple service like IP or static IP, you must pay for the AWS. It's not free. Okay, so yeah, that's important thing, right? So like you're using their service, and it's not like free tier for everything. They are giving free tier for certain things only. Okay, so that's the, you should not take advantage of all their services. Like you cannot use Lambda or what else? so many services like quantum computing or something, right? So you can use only very selected services, very important services, and they just want you to explore their um, platform, right? So they're just giving a free credit just to explore it and understand, okay, what's going on here, like that. So yeah, just this is a global search, and this is the dashboard, by the way, guys. So once you log in, this will be the dashboard, and select this search bar, type EC2. Just go to the first one. You see virtual servers in the cloud. As I mentioned, cloud is just you're renting um, a server in some random location for particular time. That's the simplest explanation for a cloud. It's not like some randomly it's located nowhere. It's nothing like that. It's located in this location, but we don't know where it is located. That's the exact location no one knows. Okay, so that's the thing. Fine. You just click on this button, launch instance, and give a name for it. So let's say 352 lab. And here, like Amazon actually have their own version of Linux. As I mentioned, anyone can create their own, right? Even Amazon ditched in and they create their own. And yeah, this is AMI, which is Amazon Machine Image. And this is their version of Linux. Please don't use this one. It's a very basic one. Okay, so basically it's kind of like a container. Okay, so just go with Red Hat because obviously Red Hat is already there. And one good thing is they use Red Hat or sorry, RHEL 9, as well as the storage is SSD, which is so important because yeah, it's the fastest one, right? So SSD, and please never change this architecture, guys. Okay, so it must be by default it selects 64-bit, your motherboard architecture, or your sorry, software architecture, which is compatible with that motherboard. So never select ARM. It doesn't work. Okay, so select only that. And yeah, so instance type is very important. This is where like it's like how much you want to rent, right? So you see the last one, it's like 48 CPU or virtual CPU and 768 gigs of memory, right? So you see the above one, it's like 1 TB of memory. So you see the cost per hour, you need to pay $5. So if you use SUSE, if you use RHEL, per hour $6, like that. So you see the scale at which they are working on, right? So obviously we don't do those. Just go with one vCPU, one memory, right? So for our lab, that's more than enough. And now is the important part, the mode of authentication. So this is where it gets a bit controversial. Like we are used to password-based authentication, right? But in your AWS, GCP, or any cloud service provider, they use key-based or passwordless authentication, which is uh, by nature it is secure. Okay, so that's for sure, and that's the reason they go with that because your password will be compromised if someone looks it, or let's say you somehow revealed it to your colleague, they can simply run some EC2 instance or they can remove some EBS storage, right? So it's a highly risk environment and it will be, or let's say if it is removed, like anyone will see it as your profile, right? So that's so crucial, especially in your work environment. So that's the reason key based is very, very important. And yeah, firstly, we need to create a key pair and we will get into the specifics of this key pair type and what is these two are in later sessions. But by default, the key pair type is RSA. I will give a name to it, the same as the name of the machine. And I will be selecting PPK, which is Putty Private Key. Okay, create key pair. It will download PPK file. And let me open this. And it is actually Putty Private Key, right? But for your surprise, it will be including the public. So it's a key pair. That's you need to underline that word. Key pair means both public and private key must be there. And in this case, it does have both PPK and PPK includes both private and public key. Okay. So yeah, you just keep everything as is same. You never change this firewall settings and so. And storage also you do have 30 gigs, guys. Okay, so it's not like okay, you can increase, but anyhow, just keep it aside for now. Okay, so because you will need that if you're using AWS as a primary lab, you will need that during the disk management sessions. So just use 10 gigs, which is enough. And here itself, nowadays, they included this number of file systems you want, right? So how many file systems you want? We don't get to that. We will create, but not now. Okay, so I will show you later sessions. And you must see this information tab, guys. So you see, clearly it is mentioned that for the first, how many has in your first including, so in your first year includes 750 has. Only that much has you are supposed to use. And you see how cleverly they mentioned as hours only. It's not like even days they mention. So only specific 750 hours you can use per month. Okay, so you should not exhaust that. If you exhaust, the cost will be incurred in your credit card, obviously, right? So, and never ever turn off, never ever keep it turned on for so long, your mission. Okay, so because one of my colleague actually kept it on for 6 months. Okay, so it is like like the cost was around 1.2 lakhs. Okay, so that's what. Even though he spent only 2 missions, that's what you can forget. That's human nature, but still never stop. Never keep it on for so long. Just stop it once you're done with your lab. That's very important. Obviously, AWS is generous enough if you are, they will see the logs. Okay, so especially they will monitor and see, okay, there is no activity. It's just the machine was on and the cost was incurred, right? So then they waived off the amount, but still it's a hefty amount, right? So yeah. And again, the thing is that you should never pay for any lab. That's so important. Especially for our sessions, you should never pay for labs. And yeah, you see it is running. Okay. And just select this box. Okay. It will copy the public IP or you can select this DNS, like DNS address. Either one you can select, it doesn't matter. And now you just go back to the drive. Again, it's more than the time, right? So please stick for another 10 more minutes if possible. At least 5 minutes. I should be completing only most of it. So just stick for at least 5 more minutes. We should complete, right? So where is the drive? Yeah, here it is. So here in this drive, you just go to the installation files and you will see PT, right? So just right click, download. Yeah, so okay, just click on download anyway. You will see like this. So like this, okay? You will never see any profiles like this, okay? But still, you will see this layout and paste that IP which you copied from AWS. And the port is 22. Never change any of these details, right? So come here and save it as lab 352 or any name you can give it. It's your choice. Now click on save and again click that back. Click on load. Click right away because we are yet to make the changes here, right? So now select the logging and click on all session outputs. Why? Because if you don't select this, your kitty logs, right? It won't be, let's say there is a power outage or something happened to your mission, like you don't have the past logs, right? So that's actually speaking important for our session. So at least keep a log for the whole day. So just give ampersand D and ampersand time. Okay, so date and time itself is more than enough. Year and month and all doesn't matter, just anyhow. So just click on all session output. That's important. And yeah, you can just remove that bell window, increase the scroll back line space. Okay, so it's like 10,000, right? So it should be in like huge number. Don't give like this much huge. Because the again your this session might not work also in some cases. So give at least 2 million or something. That should be fine. So that's like if you scroll back, right? Um, let's say you're printing a file which is huge. You're doing it for quite some time. You're working for let's say 3 to 4 hours. Your lines will be exhausted. So it won't like save all the lines. Anyhow, you're saving in the log. Still, if you want to scroll back, you should see the very first line, right? So that's the reason you're giving this much huge value. And you can change the font here, guys, but I don't. So click on change. You can change it if you want. But I do change the color. So the foreground color for the text, you just select green if you want, but you just keep it default if you're fine. And if you want it like white background, you just select this use system colors. Okay. And go to connection, type 60. So what this one does, it will select, sorry, it will send each 60 seconds once, it will select one packet. What packet? It's a network empty packet. It will be sent through your network to AWS so that the session will be alive forever, right? So because if you are not, since it is remote, right, the session will be exhausted. So that's the reason you must do this. If for your local machine also, you should do this 60. Okay, so yeah. And this data is important and we are doing it for AWS, right? So you just give the username as EC2-user and there is no password. It is a passwordless authentication, right? So now you need to expand this SSH. Don't click it. Just expand this one, right? So, and click on auth. Okay, so now click on browse and you should be having this one in the downloads, the PPK file, right? So just double click that and you see it will look for the PPK file only is compatible with this one. Then right away, don't click open. Whatever settings you've done, it will be gone. Come back to session, delete as profile. You can even right click the taskbar icon and you can even pin it. Okay, so right away, you just click on it, it should boot. You need not come here, select it, get confused or something. So just right click, select this one, the pinned one, it should automatically boot. But make sure your VM is booted, right? So that's important. Double click. You must see this connection warning, right? So it's thinking that it's a foreign connection, but it is, right? So your AWS is a foreign connection for this kitty, right? So that's the reason it is asking accept. It is trying to accept or like, yeah, authenticate with the key. It is authenticated and your machine is logged in. So once you are here, just type date or uptime, any command you type, it should work. Okay. And just select or type this one. Don't worry about this one. I will give it in the notes. Okay. So it is 9.4 version, which is the latest one. Okay. So you just type, once you're logged in, type these all: date, uptime, cat/etc, red hat, release, and the most important one is sudo su-root. So what this is, it will switch to the root user, and again root user I didn't explain, right? So root user is nothing but your admin account also. Okay, so yeah, that's how you do or these are all the commands you must execute in your AWS. GCP also, it's the exact same process, but let me show you how to stop it. Let's say you are done with the sessions, you need to stop your VM, right? And please never terminate it. Okay, and again, never like delete the PPK file. It's not for one session, it's forever. Okay, so please never ever delete that PPK file. So important, right? because again, if you want to reinstate that, it's a huge process. And some actually nowadays it's not working. You should use NFS and you need to push it. And yeah, so mostly it is recommended to again create from first. It's just you need to go through the same process, right? So please keep a one more copy of the PPK file because it's unique only for you. Fine. So yeah, just click on stop. Instant state. Check this box first and select instant state. Stop. That's it. It should stop the which one? Your AWS VM. You see, system will power off now. That's it. Okay, so that's it in your AWS. And how about the local machine? You see, it is installed. So how I can confirm? You see the lock screen. Right. So now click on any key. It should show this view. Click on not listed. Type root. And this one is a password based, right? So we are the one who gave the password. Type 1234. Enter. And just give it 1 minute. So it should load everything. Yeah, Praveen, actually, but it won't be a huge amount. Okay, so it will charge at least 1 or 2 rupees. Okay, so hardly 10 rupees. Again, it won't be charged if you are using for at least 1 or 2 hours per day. So our lab is for 1 or 2 hours, right? So every day you are using just exactly less than 3 hours, you will be never charged. Okay, so but yeah. So just close all these pop-ups. Close this. Just select these activities, and this is the UI, guys. Okay, so it's a run level is 5. Select this terminal. Okay, so now type the as I mentioned, just check the run level. You see N5. It is run level 5. That's fine. Now you type if config. So there we got what we got the IP from the portal, right? So here itself that IP is populated. Right? So since I stopped it, it is not, but you're getting the point, right? Here, clearly it is mentioned, but this is our local machine. So we are the one who need to fetch it. And for that, it is the command is if config -a. Let me mention VMware here. VMware method. The most important command because many do miss this. It is if config -a or IPA, anything you can use, but just go with one command. You'll get this IP. Just select it. It should copy in your clipboard. Again, do the same process, guys. Okay. So save it here. And actually speaking, this is what I will do because it's a lab, right? So 352, let's say V1 or something. So let me save it, load, and right away I'll go to data and save the password. So root 1, 2, 3, 4 in the auto login password section. And one interesting thing here is even for AWS, you can actually bootstrap it. Bootstrap in the sense you can give the same date command I will give. You will see how it works. Okay. So again, I will enable the log, all the logs. Month, minute, and time. Okay. So none window is and in the meantime, do you guys have any other doubts? Please do let me know for the day. So we will go through that. And you need not select the SSH and all because it is a password based authentication, which is for VMware. Now click on save, double click, accept. Right away, it did accepted the password, right? You see, understood? Yeah, Praveen. So they are generous enough to refund it. So that's good on them. Yeah. Can we have the WhatsApp link? Yes, for sure. No legend. So yeah, only the installation. Okay. So just try to install this one and okay, still GCP is there. Let me quickly show you the GCP one. Okay. So it's the same thing, but one good thing in GCP is it will follow the hierarchy. Okay. So this is the dashboard, guys. So you just go to that cloud.google.com once you sign up. And the best thing about GCP is obviously you can use your Gmail account. And in my case, or in most cases, many will have more than one account, right? You can use, or you can even create a new account just for this lab. And you see, this is an hierarchy which I mentioned. It will follow a project, and each thing you can call it as a project. Means, like, let's say there is a development going on, it is a separate project. There is a production, it's a project. It's like testing is going on. Like each project has its own set of services, and that's a great thing actually what Google done here. So easily, and one important thing is each project you can designate a different payment method. That's a very good thing actually speaking, right? So yeah, that's how it is. You just select by default, it will be as a my first project. It's fine. And don't be overwhelmed about so many services will be here, right? So you just have a global search. You just type virtual and the first one, VM instances, right? So under compute engine and it is very below. While one sec. Yeah. So VM instance. Okay. One sec. Maybe session issue. That's it. 1 second. If it is not working, we can wind up for the day because it's already late. You can do it in next session also. Let me just it's and for the payment for the batch, right? So one sec, let me give that link at least. So if you're fine with my way of approach, so now you got a fair idea how I will train, right? So yeah, so it will be purely practical, and I will give some insight on the interviews. Like if I teach a topic, if it is asked in the interview, I will be mentioning it. And this is the payment link, guys. Okay, so yeah, you just click on this buy course and it should be landing to the payment section and you can pay for it. Okay, and still my GCP is it's not taking. So I will show one sec. It's payment and all is fine. I'm not sure why it is not taking, but fine. I will show this in the next session, or you even have the instruction in the installation file. You see, real installation on GCP. It will be clearly mentioned here. What I clicked, everything will be mentioned. You see, I highlighted what I selected. So you just go through this. That itself is more than enough. If you want to be using GCP, again, the disclaimer is please never install or use both AWS and GCP because you are exhausting both free tier accounts, right? Either go with AWS or GCP. Okay, so yeah, one advantage of GCP is you will have 4 gigs of memory, guys. You see, sorry, 2 gigs of memory and one vCPU you can use. Okay, so you see, yeah, the estimation also it will be mentioned here. And by the way, you are actually, if you use RHEL, you are paying for the image fee for the Red Hat. Okay, it's like a license. And you must see this message, guys. Your free trial credit will be used for this VM instance. If you're not seeing this, right away do log out and create a new account. Okay, so never use a account without free trial because it's very costly, especially GCP, right? So it's like it's your call. Okay. So anyhow, you must have a free tier, especially for the demo batches. Very, very important. Okay. And you just select this SSH. Hope you can see this one. Select SSH, and it's a browser-based shell. Okay, so you need not even configure Kitty. So I thought of showing that, but yeah, it's not working. I will try to fix it and show you in the next session, but it's the same process only. So you can go through this document, which is already residing under installation files, right? So yeah, that's it for the day, guys. So let me just sum up what we discussed. So we discussed firstly about what is virtualization and containerization, and the major difference we did discuss, right? And moving on, we did discuss about the booting process. Again, it's again for me it is a basic explanation. Okay, so it's a very huge topic. So, but this much knowledge is for now is more than enough for you. Okay. And yeah, so we saw all the process, and the next one is we did the installation part. So that's it. Like we did all the three methods. So the GCP one, I will show you in the next session. Okay, so don't worry about it, but you can follow this guide. Fine. So yeah, once you are done with the AWS, please do stop it. That's what I will recommend you. Don't terminate. Just stop it. It should be fine. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Praveen, for paying. That's great. Okay, then. So it's sorry for dragging like so long. It's almost like half an hour more. Yeah. Ravindra, okay. You can use VMware 16, Ravindra. So VMware 17C, if you really want, I will give it in next session. Okay. So don't worry about it. But as of now, try to use VMware 16. That should be more than fine. Okay. It doesn't matter any other version, especially for VM. Just we need to run it, right? So this RHEL version matters, but VM version doesn't matter. Awesome, Ravi. Yeah, both the Ravindra and Ravi. Great. Yeah, thanks for your time, and we will have the next session on the next weekend. So yeah, guys, that's it for the day then. Thanks all. Have a good one. Bye bye.